Everybody, welcome to the Transformation Leaders podcast today, and I'm excited to show you a demo of the future of conversational AI. My colleague Sean will be along in just a few moments. We're running late today, back-to-back meetings, and trying to still keep the podcast on time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and Sean will probably pop in just a little bit. But today, wanted to introduce you to some of the technology that's out there. This company has been around for a while now, for at least a couple of years. And I'm going to play you this sample text so that you can hear the audio. And really what we're talking about is text to speech, speech to text. And then when this is all packaged up together behind the scenes, we can add some agentic AI, some tooling, and a whole bunch of really cool stuff to change the way that we interact with AI in general. So hopefully all of my screen configurations are correct and you're able to hear me and everything is going well that way. So I'm going to go ahead and play this and hopefully you'll be able to hear this.
Welcome to the Transformation Leaders Podcast, your gateway to the cutting edge of innovation in the world of technology. I'm your host, David, and each week, we explore the latest technology, leadership trends, breakthroughs, and the folks shaping the future of technology.
And so that was just a quick sneak behind the scenes as far as the voice that you probably heard all over the internet and YouTube. Hey, Sean.
Hey.
And just getting everybody acclimated here. Told everybody that we were running late today with back-to-backs. So we're trying to get everything moving at the same time. And so basically, I just gave everybody a quick rundown of 11 Labs, let them hear the voice that probably they have heard a million places on, especially on YouTube. That's that real popular Adam voice that you get from this that's behind the scenes in 11 Labs. Also was discussing a little bit about how the conversational AI landscape is essentially going to change. We're talking really the blending of text to speech, speech to text, interactivity, agentic AI, tooling, and all of that coming together, kind of transforming chatbots in its more traditional sense. Not that chatbots don't still have their place, but I don't know about you, but for me personally, my wife has an Apple. I have an Android, so we're going head to head with the technology here. But I find myself more often than not interacting with Google, especially with the little microphone, just simply clicking it rather than typing what I want. I take the audio approach as opposed to having to type it because I don't really type that fast. And so it's really easy to go, hey, Google, or hey, Siri, or something like that to get done what you need to do. And so pretty much a lot of this transformation is going to be happening. So before I get going and dig into kind of the behind the scenes about the setup of conversational AI as it exists from the service currently at 11 Labs, and then show them some additional tooling to use agentic AI, to use the tooling to get customer information. Did you want to add anything before I get going on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a fundamental part of text to voice that, almost everybody uses, especially in the YouTube community. My wife's a YouTuber. She uses 11 Labs. If people have any questions, they should do the research because there's a plethora of these type tools out there. This just happens to be a very common one. And the hope here today is that you're learning a little bit about what these tools are and what tools are on the market, because that is what I am seeing. And David, I'd love your philosophy on this. We're in G.I. Joe mode. The more you know, right? And knowing is half the battle kind of thing. Because about 3 years ago, Silicon Valley helicoptered money to a whole bunch of people that could spell AI. And the result has been a plethora of companies coming out of the woodwork with tools. 11 Labs is one of those. But in 3 months, they may be completely left behind by somebody else. So that was going to be my comment on 11 Labs.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. And I just brought onto the screen center stage. We're talking about audio in this demo. Maybe we'll do another video in the future with that, with this one, but this allows you to take everything to an all new level. This is using video in addition to audio, and you can bring in 11 Labs. They also have their own audio generation. And I did want to say that the reason that everybody goes to YouTube or on YouTube for these types of things through 11 Lab is because they provide the best quality audio that is out there. There's others that do it, but when you hear the difference between 11 Lab sounding almost unmistakably human-like, that I don't know, you just can't go back and get lesser than. They're the standard, unfortunately, for right now. And so this is another tool that allows you to clone yourself. 11 Labs allows you to clone your own voice. So I could talk to it. Sean and I could take our podcasts, upload them, and we could put this whole thing on auto mode. But with HeyGen, because Sean and I are here, and maybe that's something interesting. I'll have to put quite a bit of money behind that to pull it off. But Sean and I could do a virtual podcast with our avatars that we'll train, and we won't even be on the podcast, and we're really not. And so that's actually where this technology is, to where we could literally have AI write the podcast, create the podcast, have these avatars, and you could create a non-human podcast 100% using all of these tools. So really, really cool stuff to jump in and play. Here's the demo that we'll be actually running from that's here. But before we get there, I want to show you a little bit, a peek behind the curtain so you know what's going on. We're using our friend N8N for a very simple webhook that is going to simply go and get customer data from a Microsoft SQL database, and then it's going to give a response, essentially who that customer is, so it can look up that customer data. I want your mind to just open up and think about all of the possibilities, from support to sales to anything in between, where AI and agentic AI with these types of tooling can do all kinds of really cool and interesting things for your business. So let's look at the configuration of an agent, a conversational AI agent, and the plethora of settings behind it. Now, the good news is when you set up a new agent, it's fairly straightforward. So let me come back out of here, and I'll just choose new agent so you can see this experience. You can choose from a blank, and you can configure everything from the ground up, but you do have some configurations. And honestly, I cheated. I chose the support agent, which means I got a plethora of prompt engineering already done for me. This is my tweaked version of it, but 80% of this was good to go out of the box. So just looking at what this template gives you, it sets the tone and personality. It sets the environment from which it should do what it needs to do. And it has some guardrail stuff on it as well. So that's what you get out of the box with some of these. Otherwise, if you do blank, you're going to have to write all of this yourself. And if one of these use cases even remotely comes close to what you're doing, pop it open, see what it does, tweak it, see if you can get better mileage out of it that way, rather than starting from scratch, or create one from scratch and go and use and test and compare. And, that's what you should do for sure. This is not free. They do give you 10,000 credits out of the box. So every month on the free plan, you get 10,000 credits. And then running through this demo today will probably eat up a third to maybe even a half, depending on how long we let the demo ride. But you only get about maybe at most 4 to 5 burns or turns of this. So if you do this, and if you think you get the free plan and, this will be fine, it depends on what you're doing. So I'll give you some rough numbers from what I've seen. A conversational session can go anywhere between, at best, 1,500 if it's a very quick question. If there's an engaging question, it could last literally as long as it takes to resolve the issue. But on average, figure 2,500 to 10,000 credits per session. So to put this into perspective, let me see if I can pull up this on my other screen again. We'll go to 11 Labs just to give everybody an idea of pricing, literally what you're into, because it doesn't matter how cool it is. People want to know what it can be for the pricing. So realistically, I think the Pro is probably good for small to medium-sized businesses because you'll get 500,000 credits. You could get away with this if you're like just starting up a company, you're just starting up a website. That's fine. It's $22 a month, but you get 100,000 credits. That'll get you maybe, I don't know, one every other day, a conversation of interactivity. But if you're getting 5 to 10 customers a day, you're probably going to need to deal with this $99 one. Now, you might think, oh my God, that's expensive. Okay, that's fine. But how much is a part-time or even a full-time employee? Are you going to pay them $99 a month, or is it going to be much cheaper to go this route? So I think you can answer that question. There are other plans. Here's 2 million credits a month. So this is more approaching your medium-sized business or even your larger, still small business. And then just your regular average everyday business user. This will fit into most use cases. There are Fortune 100, 500 companies to where they'll gobble this up in probably a week or less, especially if you're a large computer company and the average support call lasts 43 minutes. You're going to burn through some troubleshooting. Hopefully your AI is spot on and you got everything dialed in, and it really helps the customer solve their issue because they've seen it before, or it knows enough, hey, I can't help, let me transfer this to a live agent, which is what you do in all of the back-end tooling. And I'm not going to show that today, but I did want to at least plant the seed that you can do that for these use cases. So the first thing you can do is you can say what English or what language your bot is in. Now you can choose more than one. Under the additional languages, actually I went click happy here, but in any event, here is where you can choose multiple additional languages if you so choose. So I don't speak any of these languages. I'm going to take it off, but nonetheless, you can choose multiple languages. And where this changes is over here in the user interface. So if I were to, by example, do the first two just for the sake of doing it, I'll click save. When I get this thing saved out, I should be able to go over to my demo screen, refresh it, and I'll get a new option. So keep your eye on the prize, the lower left or right corner of the screen. When I refresh, we should get another option here, and we do not. So I did something wrong, or I didn't configure a switch in the code. All right, anyway, so nonetheless, I'll have to probably pop in some of this widgetal code again. And so I don't want to be able to do that on today's demo, but nonetheless, this is how you do it. You'll just update the code with that one line and things will be magically working again for you. All right, let me go ahead and hit save there to get it back out. And now this is the first message. So you saw me almost go into the demo, but I fell short, just short of the disclaimer. If I engage fully, this is the first thing it would say. It would say, hi, whatever, I'm not going to read to you. And then the next thing it's going to do is it's going to drop down into the system prompt. Now I'm going to use a technical term, on invocation or on start of the chat session, we are going to use this prompting, and it reads it really, really quick. So it has this full context of what's going on. Now, I do want to say that 11 Labs is controlling all of this. So if you go throwing a tremendous amount of data in here, plus all of the knowledge, I will warn that you don't have a lot of control over the large language model they are using behind the scenes. So you may find yourself running into a context shortage based on the model that they choose. So if, for example, Gemini Pro 2.5 has 2 million parameters of context window, not parameters, 2 million size and context window, you'll be able to use pretty much just about anything you throw at it. However, if you're using something like GPT under OpenAI or even Claude, you're going to run into like 128,000, which is much less than 2 million. And you could wind up in a situation where either it doesn't work or it doesn't work as expected. And I'll preface this to say that these type of situations are real. And this is a good use case of this. When you run into this not in the wild, but in real use case, when you're dealing with these larger context windows, service companies like these, they will not allow it to break. They will write error handling around it. Now, the nature of AI, unfortunately, it remembers the beginning, it remembers the end, but it gets amnesia for anything in the middle, which means it's going to start flushing, dumping stuff out of the buffer. And now all of a sudden your context window is shrinking. So imagine this very large prompt. Imagine if we lost the tone and all of a sudden it decided to take its tone from the customer's tone. And I'm giving you like a worst case scenario, but this is how things go. And so all of a sudden it loses its tone and the customer's angry and starts cussing and screaming at it. These are things that you need to test for. So when you're testing this, either A, reach out to 11 Labs support and throw a couple of use cases. They have community support too as well. So go check out some of those or call their support, especially if you're paying for it, and say, hey, what about these use cases? Where do I need to be careful? Because I personally haven't done a tremendous amount of these. I've done a lot of smaller demos and everything's usually fine in a smaller demo. You get little tweaks that you have to tug and pull, but this use case that I'm describing is very, very real because as I scroll down now to the next area, here we can throw in things called dynamic variables. And this is where the conversation unfolds in some way. And we're going to show you an example of that today. I'm not programming in dynamic variables, but usually I can use this from tooling. I might have something of information as it relates to this customer, and I might need to throw the dynamic variable as it relates to their customer data and information into the conversation, but I need to get it from someplace else. And it's dynamic because every person that interacts with it is a new session with the bot. And so that's what the dynamic part is. You're just placeholders. So for example, you're using this username. You might ask them, hey, what is your name? And then you can store that in this dynamic variable so it can be reused down the road in code where you might write something on the back end, or you might need to just have the AI address verbally them by name from there on out. So it is pretty smart. Now, I was mentioning that you don't have a whole lot of control over the LLM, but you do have these options available to you. And most of these are pretty good. Now, the good news is they do have the Gemini 2.5 Flash, but I do not see the 2.5 Pro that I spoke about having that insanely large context window of 2 million. So most of these are going to be limited to what I was describing below. And so if you're okay with that, that's all well and good. You might want to ask them if they're going to have Gemini 2.5 Pro out that has that larger context window, easy for me to say 3 times. And here is your temperature slider. For those of you that want plain English, think of it in terms, let's rename temperature to creativity. I mean, they use the word here, but it would be nice to use the word here too as well. The problem is that OpenAI set the standard. They called it temperature. Now everybody calls it temperature. So just in your mind's eye, you hear temperature, think of creativity. The lower the setting, the less creative, the higher the chances of hallucination increase tenfold, because it's like a very, it's like if those of you that are cat animal lovers, that I apologize, but if you have a dog, you understand dogs are just, do anything to please you. And so that's how they are. And that's how this is too. You start raising it. This is more dog. This is more cat. In the middle's a balance like cat dog on Nickelodeon. Probably dated myself. But anyway, my kids used to watch that one. And then over here, you have some token usage. This is where you can provide some restrictions. As of right now, it's simply just going to run at the tilt with it. But you can restrict the session. I will say that this will impact the user experience considerably. So I'll leave it to your discretion. We'll leave it there.
Yeah. One thing that I definitely want to point out with this, and it's very weird from many other things that we've all experienced in digital transformation. The technology is easier to implement than to test.
Yeah, it is.
So, it isn't about how fast you can get it up. It's how reliable it will be in the long term. Safety, stability, reliability, those are what's important. I know we're showing a lot of the bells and whistles here, and I'm a big bells and whistle guy. But I have to remind everybody, with this technology, it's the testing regimen, right? and you will spend 3 months testing and 30 minutes implementing.
That is a fantastic point.
Nobody really grasps this with
Till
this
it's too late.
technology, that, you will sit down with an AI and spend more time coming up with test case scenarios than you will actually setting up feature functionality in the technology. Because this is so dynamic, you have to put guardrails in. If you put guardrails in, you have to test the guardrails.
Yep.
Right? If you put in data, the knowledge base here, you're going to want to test to make sure the knowledge base is accurate. You're going to want to play this nice, meaning a happy path to get to the end of a journey, but you're going to want to build in the evil path, the bad path, right? The people who are just lost, right? So testing AI is about social engineering, and your typical AI person is not really good at that. So, my recommendation is, number one, find somebody, hire somebody, or reach out to some consulting organization. Me and David happen to know a couple, that can help you get that journey and understand that you need to identify all the reputable paths. Now, you may have a manual user journey right now, and you'll have a data set. That's great. You could actually feed that data set into AI and help you understand and map out what people typically get wrong in their journeys. So, readiness is very important, because you're going to need to be able to test this effectively. I said this before. I think I've said it every week for the past 5 weeks. My apologies. Technology is the least significant part of this transformation.
Absolutely, all spot on things. And this is where generative AI and AI in general is it's changing the landscape for customers and how they do business, because now you're able to accelerate to such an extent to where you never were able to before, but it's still creating new bottlenecks like Sean was describing in QA. And this is where you need to really strategically plan your operation, because you're going to have a backlog and not enough people in these positions to, if you're cranking out 40 of these for different sites or services, depending on your use case, you're going to create a tremendous backlog and you're going to have a shortage. So anyway, all food for thought. And Sean made some excellent points there. I don't know if you guys caught this or not. While Sean was speaking to this, I wanted to also reiterate that there are guardrails within the prompt, because Sean had mentioned guardrails in what he was talking about, but that's only one of many areas for guardrailing. The other thing too is I flipped the switch for RAG because I didn't know how long it was going to take. The use case setup that I wanted to explain, we've got this fictitious company, maybe they're an IBH, IVR, whatever, they're a partner of and for Hewlett Packard. Because one of the things that I've done in the knowledge base is I've fed it in some HP support websites. I've also gave in the public website for Hewlett Packard. I think I mentioned Hewlett Packard 1 or 2 times here in the environment, explaining that it's supposed to be supporting these types of machines or customers. So this is just a fictitious use case. You could put any company, your product, whatever, in here. And I've only added 2. And so to add documents, to see what you can add URLs, you can pop in text, and you can also add files. And if you look at this, you have EPUB, which is interesting. So anybody that has an electronic book or ebook in EPUB format, you can push your whole book into the platform. Or if you have this available in a PDF format or just informational, instructional information. I know some companies, including some customers that we've worked with, like to put information in PDFs. in PowerPoint. And so if that is the case, or even Excel, you'll need to change your approach and not add them here. What you would potentially do is you'd create a webhook, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. This is this webhook. And it could be and a webhook, if you're not familiar, you probably heard the term application programming interface, or the acronym API. And it's how the internet works. It's how the internet talks. Everything speaks in APIs. But a webhook is just a single endpoint. An API can have one endpoint, but usually it's one or more endpoints that do something that either gets information or deletes information or updates information. And a webhook is very similar to an API. It's just a single focused thing. And in this case, all I'm using a webhook to get the customer information. I alluded to that earlier where I showed you this very simple workflow. This part right here is the ear. It's listening for 11 Labs to call it and inquire. This is running a query on the database based on a parameter, the last 4 digits of a customer's phone number. And then it's going to go into the database to look up that information and then retrieve and bring that back. And this is where it sends it back to 11 Labs for it to use in the conversation. So now that I've given you that, this will make a lot more sense. So I just named it HTTP customers. Its description is super important. So if you're seeing this, trying to replicate it, because you can do this for free, I can't stress this enough. This is the name that the agent uses to say, do I have any tools at my disposal to do something that I'm being asked to do? And so in the prompt, we're saying it needs to get the customer's last 4 digits of the phone number. And this description is what it uses when it looks at the tool that says, what do I have for tools? Oh, this tool gets customers from a database. I need to use this tool. And then if I do use this tool, it's going to read this query parameter. I'm not going to get into the technical of it, but just nonetheless, I have the last 4 digits of the phone number. So I called this box or variable last 4, and it's going to get it from the client in the session, going to package it up. It's going to store it in here in the memory, and then it's going to send it with the webhook information where I said it's listening on 11 Labs is going to speak to it and pass in that information so that inside of that workflow, all of this magic will happen. And the other part here is this other last piece for the description. Just like the webhook had a description, it also says that the description is telling you, oh, I have a parameter here. How do I use it? Oh, this is where I pass in the last 4 digits of the customer phone number. And this is important too here because the value type means it's an LLM prompt. That means in English that it's coming from the conversation. It's coming from the large language model session with the person talking and having a conversation with it. So it knows that's where I get it, because I have other options like dynamic variables, constant variables. Won't get into all of that. But if you need help with this, again, reach out to somebody that can help, or Sean or I. We're on LinkedIn. Then here's where you delete them. And for the most part, there's other configurable stuff within the webhook. And there's a tool here that specifically ends the call. This is built in. Don't delete that. Otherwise, it's going to leave it in a weird state. And the other thing is, and I'm not going to get into all of these, but just know that there's tabs, and then there's more scrolling to be done, more settings. And then here's some analysis that will help you, because you have the ability to go through the call history. Now, to be fair, I want to let everybody know that I can go into a call history for this agent, and I can, if I dig into the call, I can actually listen to the session. I can hear the person interacting. It's all being recorded. That's why there's a consent form when you invoke, and you need to make sure that there are terms and conditions. You are recording and storing their information, which in some countries could be considered PII. So I'm not a lawyer. Talk to your legal team, have them figure out what and how you should say it. But nonetheless, I wanted to be honest and transparent that if you use these types of technologies, this is what you're getting into. In addition to that, you'll get the transcription from the whole session. And it doesn't happen immediately. There's a lag of about up to 5 minutes after the session's completed, where this is stored off to where you can go into call history when we go through our demo in just a few seconds here. I might be able to get in there fast enough to see it if I don't go too long, but you can download the recording. You can get the transcript. You can download the transcript, any client data that was disclosed, PII including. So if you're using this in HIPAA context, medical, again, you need to go through all of this. And not only to Sean's point about testing, but there is, 30 minutes of configuration. I configured this bot because I have experience with it in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes in that time frame. I just rinse and repeat, copy and paste, and then go in and tweak. And so you're going to get to that point. But then there's all this other legal stuff that you have to deal with and marketing and blah, blah, blah. So just know that this is the easy part when it's all said and done. All right. So that being said, Sean, do you have anything else that you want to add before I jump into today's demo? And now that I've exhausted and bored everybody to death, they've all been waiting for this moment.
Exactly. I mean, it's good to understand how the technology works, because the technology is certainly the beginning, right? The technology gives you the idea that, whatever change and transformation you want to do is possible. But you need to look beyond what is possible into what is likely, right? So make sure that you understand the technology inside and out like we're doing today. This is how we look at this technology, right? Is we throw use cases at it until we understand, if it bobs, it's supposed to zag. If it weaves, it's supposed to jump, whatever, so that in our minds we can understand how the needle has to be thread for the solution. And the solution is the one that creates the business value. And that is people, process, and technology. So that's the only thing that I would kind of preface everybody to this is, yes, technology is cool. I love technology. But make sure you understand how it works so that you can leverage it to your needs.
Yeah, excellent. All excellent points. So one thing I didn't show that I'll just show very briefly is you have a plethora of voices to choose from. And if you want to hear what it sounds like, you just hover over any one of them.
Our distrust is very expensive.
God has given you one face, and you make yourself another.
Government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth.
Some very weird sayings, but nonetheless, you get. And so you can choose. We've got Jessica today.
If you spend your whole life waiting for the storm, you'll never enjoy the sunshine.
And so we're using Jessica today in our demo. And so you have all of these very natural sounding voices. Now, even though Jessica's soundbite sounded pretty good, she actually sounds even better in the demo. Now, and there is variability because I've done these back to back to back, and there's inflections and tones. The last thing I do want to say, because this came up with a client, and I had to explain this to them, and they didn't quite understand it. So you might be used to the term IVR. And IVR is a technology that's usually used in call centers. We've all been frustrated by it. We've all had to deal with it. If you call somebody and they say, press 1 for this, then you press 1, then it's this maze of a menu, right? In some cases, it's helpful. In other cases, it's annoying, especially anyway. I'm sure you've all been encountered by the frustrations of that. That is programmed. That is deterministic. It is like a workflow. You go A, B, C, and D, and it is what it is. This is an organic conversation with artificial intelligence. So I want you to think of this like an intern. If you train an intern on how to do something and give them knowledge and give them information, every instance, every interaction they have with your customer, they're not going to be deterministic. It's going to have variation in tone, inflections, and all this stuff and things that it says. Sometimes that might be desirable, other times less desirable. And so and going back to Sean's point about testing, you're going to have to go through and rewrite this prompt infinite number of times until you dial it in. Every time you occur something, you're going to want to go through the logs. You might want to take the transcript of the audio and run them through another AI process, looking for problems proactively. Like there's all different kinds of things to do. All right, enough talking. Let's get into this, and I will agree, and we're going to kick off the demo. Got to allow the microphone access, so that's all good. That's browser security.
Hey there, I'm Synapse Pal from support. How can I help?
Yes, thank you. I'm looking for help with an HP printer that I have that I can't seem to print anymore. It was fine yesterday, but not now.
I'm sorry to hear you're having trouble printing. I can definitely help with that. Can I please get the last 4 digits of your phone number so I can pull up your Synapse customer account?
Sure, it's 0105.
Thank you. I'm pulling up your account now. Okay, I see your account. To be sure I can help with your specific printer issue, could you please describe the problem in a bit more detail? For example, are you getting any error messages or is the printer simply not
Well,
responding?
actually, I'm sorry, I need to interrupt. I can tell you right now, I was printing fine yesterday via Wi-Fi, and now the only way I can print is when I plug into USB cable. I can no longer print wirelessly.
Thanks for the additional details. It sounds like you're having trouble with your printer's zero wireless connection. Have you tried restarting both your printer and your Wi-Fi router?
Yeah, let's not do any of the basic troubleshooting steps. I'm pretty technical myself, and I've restarted everything. I've reconnected everything. I've exhausted all the options that I know to do, and I've just simply given up and tried to plug in because I needed to get a document printed out. This is not preferable. I need to get the wireless fixed.
Okay, I understand. Since you've already tried the standard troubleshooting steps, let's dig a bit deeper. Have you checked if your printer is still connected to your Wi-Fi network and is obtaining the correct IP address?
Yeah, I can browse the internet. I can see files on my network. I can do everything. So everything is fine wirelessly. It's just the printing that doesn't work. Again, I told you I already did everything that's basic. These are still basic troubleshooting steps. Could we go into something maybe a little bit more advanced?
Okay, got it. Since you're comfortable with more advanced troubleshooting, let's try a couple of things. Have you tried accessing the printer's embedded web server, or EWS, to check its wireless settings and status?
No, I have not. Could you walk me through that? It sounds interesting. How do I access?
Sure thing. To access the printer's embedded web server, you'll need to find its IP address. This can usually be found on the printer's control panel or by printing a network configuration page. Once you have the IP address, simply type it into your web browser's address bar, and that should bring you to the printer's EWS page. Does that make sense?
It does. I printed out the configuration and I see my IP address is 192.168.0.25. So I type that into the browser and I can now see the page. Now what do I do?
Okay, great. Now that you're in the printer's EWS page, look for a section related to networking or wireless settings. From there, can you check the Wi-Fi status to ensure it's connected to your network?
It says that it's connected to the network, but the wireless settings on the printer itself are turned off. But I didn't think that would need to be on because it's already connected via a wired setting. Is that correct?
Okay, thanks for checking that. Just to clarify, are you saying that the printer is connected to your network via both a wired Ethernet connection and a wireless connection simultaneously?
No, what I'm saying is the printer is physically connected to the network via a wired connection. Although the printer has capability to wirelessly connect, it is disabled and not turned on. And I have verified it is connected.
Okay, I understand now. Since you're using a wired connection, the wireless settings shouldn't be the issue. Let's focus on the wired connection. Can you check the printer's IP settings to make sure it's configured correctly for your network?
Yeah, like I said, it is connected and I'm able to get to the web page. So doesn't that say that it's on the network? Because if I'm using the connection page in the browser, clearly it's connected to this network.
You're right. My apologies. Since you can access the EWS page, the printer is definitely connected to the network. Let's try something else. Have you tried updating the printer's firmware to the latest version?
No, the printer was working fine yesterday. Everything was fine. I don't think the firmware would have broken overnight. Can you suggest anything else?
That's a fair point. Given that it was working yesterday,
Okay, I've run out of credits apparently, so it's ended. Like I said, so I just wanted to give an example of some. I started off simple, which would be the use case where you're getting a very simple, easy, or ignorant type of person calling up technical support. And then I switched gears. I expressed a little frustration with it. Because I am technical, I tried to guide it down whatever. What I was hoping that it would say or go to is to check the local print spool on the machine, because I know that might be a problem. But the point is, fairly overall, for 10 minutes, 15 minutes of configuration to set this up. And again, to Sean's point, it needs to be tested. But by and large, it's doing a really, really good job. And so I think maybe we were only 8, maybe 9 minutes into the call before we ran out of credits, and that'll show you how quick 10,000 credits go. So we showed you the pricing earlier. You can quantify that very quickly. As a result of this, this can get very expensive as an offering. So there might be a fine line to where humans, in some cases, depending on the size of your operation, this could run you more money than humans in some use cases. But you have to quantify. You have to run these numbers. So even though this is cool and cutting edge and pretty good, you'll also have to weigh against other metrics and measurement. If it takes 15 minutes to resolve a call, I think they call that something like AHT, in lowering the amount of time it takes to get to resolution. So if you can cut it by a half or a third, that's money. So, bottom line is, all of this is the technology. That's really all we're here to show you, and to point some strategic things out. That is kind of the art of what's possible. So by and large, that was the demo. You saw very interesting use cases here, and I think it sounded great and pretty natural. There was a little lag, if I'm being honest, here and there from time to time, but it has to check the database, check those vectorized resources, check the web pages, and it's translating and getting information in real time. And all in all, I think it was acceptable. Sean, do you have any feedback on the experience or the latency or anything therein? And I forgot to ask you, because we're doing the audio side of it, might be a little bit hard in our session for you to hear some of this without the external device.
Yeah, I mean, again, completely acceptable. But you have to understand that this is, if you're small, medium business, maybe this makes a lot of sense as you showed it today. But for more complex journeys, and maybe you have a loyalty program, maybe you have, maybe you want to, you have to, by SLA, allow a human to take over. There's a ton of different use cases that this particular flow wouldn't work with. But putting that aside, this technology is amazing. It's not the only vendor out there. You could throw a rock and hit 10 of them. But it comes down to understanding the art of the possible. This technology is available today, and every other month, it takes another level up, as you were showing in the very beginning, having virtual avatars, much more natural language than what was state of the art 3 months ago.
Yep.
So this is just going to get better. You heard it hiccup on the call a couple times. You heard mispronouncing every once in a while. This is kind of shatters the illusion. But when that illusion is shattered, are your customers going to be going, "Oh, they tricked me. I thought it was a human." Right? So there's a lot of things outside. As I say, social engineering is an aspect of this technology you really have to think through. But putting all that caution aside, this is awesome stuff.
Yep. Sounds great for sure. Well, Sean, I don't have anything else to add.
No,
I'm kind of burnt out on the demo.
Exactly.
You want to give everybody kind of a little rundown of what we got headed up next week, and then close this out?
Next week, and you should see on the calendar already, and we've announced it already. We have some colleagues of mine who are going to walk us through some of the things that they are doing now with funding and AI and scientific research and blockchain, Web3. So this, I hope, will expose to you all how smart people out there can do digital transformation in so many different ways. And your lack of imagination, your lack of knowledge of the technology may very well be limiting you and your options. So I look forward to talking to my great friends, Sean and Court, as we're going through and explaining some of these new worlds that people are doing, specifically something that Sean has kind of coined, which is agentic science. So look forward to that. Reach out on LinkedIn to both of them. They're great people. You should talk to them. They're very smart. And of course, reach out to David and me if you have any questions about what we're showing, or we'd love to have more guest hosts on this podcast so that we can focus more on what people are doing outside just mine and David's spheres.
Well said. Well, everybody, that's it for this show. That's it for this week of the Transformation Leaders Podcast. We're here every Wednesday, 12 o'clock noon. And until next week, we'll see you later. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.